This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast, brought to you by the Genesis Company, coming at Tuesday morning. It's October 24th, and we have a Jaden McDaniels extension to discuss today. Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press. Jace, 5 years, $131 million for Jaden McDaniels. You and I were both actually at the facility when the news was reported. I just pictured Jaden like hood up in the locker room, refreshing for Sham's tweets. The tweet comes through, news breaks, Jaden sprints out onto the floor.
Pulls the hood down.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Just immediately goes into like backwards running. I don't know where I was going with that, but all the things that are like, I'm testing out this calf right now. Jaden McDaniels is back. It's great news that he, signed this contract. We'll get into the details of that contract, which I personally thought was a good number. It's good news that he looks like he's back physically too. We can talk about that a little bit later, maybe when we talk about the Raptors matchup, because we're going to kind of jam in extension talk and small preview of Wolves-Raptors in this episode. But just for you, you see the news come across, you go back home last night, you look at it. It's actually 5/131. It was reported 5/136. 5 of those are like unlikely bonuses. What did you just think of the number?
I thought it was really good from the team perspective. I do think it's a lot of times for us, it's difficult when you watch Jaden McDaniels play every day. You see like his impact, you see his potential. And so I think everybody here in Minnesota is like, wow, incredible. To get him on that type of number, this guy's going to be a superstar. I do think you have to balance that out. Like sometimes with a more national view of people who yes, a lot of people do understand Jaden McDaniels' impact for sure. But there is something where people are like, okay, yeah, he's good. He's the 4th or 5th offensive weapon on his team. Yeah, he's a very good defender. Yeah, I can see a young skill set here. So I think Minnesota did a nice job, not maybe succumbing to even what they believe. We think he could be this.
I like that. What they believe.
Let's throw every dollar at him. And understanding what would the market roughly be? What could we pitch here? I just think when it comes to these extensions, all the comments are just pay him. Just pay him. It's like you are allowed to negotiate. That actually is Tim Connolly and his front office's job to do that. And certainly not try to upset Jaden and his representation, but come to a negotiation to get to a fair number. And this is a fair number. Right. If certainly for Jaden, it's as you're dealing with a little calf injury right now that you're working back from, and certainly he might even go Wednesday, but you see there are actual injuries out there, and there's risk, and the team is paying you and guaranteeing a lot of stuff for you, and now you're set where you could have played it out, and maybe you would have made first team all defense and demanded even more money down the road, but that's kind of the compromise you make a lot of times signing this extension ahead of restricted free agency.
No, exactly, and it wasn't some massive under market number. I went through and I pulled up the extensions from the last 3 seasons here all in one place. So these guys, same place as Jaden, end of year 3 going into year 4. They signed an extension. There's a bunch of guys who signed maxes, right? Luka, Trey, Shea, Michael Porter Jr., Zion, Ja, Darius Garland, Ant, LaMelo, Tyrese Halliburton, and Desmond Bane was really close to it. Then there's kind of this next group, right? Somewhere below the max, but above the mid-level, right? Kind of closer to the max than it would be the mid-level. And it's guys or it was before Vassell and McDaniel signed this summer. It was Jordan Poole was kind of top of that range. Tyler Hero, they signed a couple years ago for about 20% of the salary cap. The number I thought it would for sure be higher than was Mikal Bridges, who was 17% of the salary cap when he signed 2 years ago his rookie extension. And Jaden's actually comes in just below that. I was kind of anticipating somewhere more in the middle of this range here, Jace. The above Bridges, below Poole and Hero, kind of this RJ Barrett number, which RJ signed for 4 years, 107 a couple years ago. That's what I was anticipating. To be below Bridges, I think that's a pretty major win at that number.
I totally agree. And I think you're going to look at that chart and a lot of people will be like, how did he get less than these guys? Like, we can think what we want about certain players. And certainly I don't like Jordan Poole as a player. I really haven't. But he was coming off of winning an NBA championship. Like, and he was a contributor to that. And like, he started games when Steph was out, all this stuff. Like, Tyler Hero has played at NBA finals. He's played in the Eastern Conference finals. He's like a top 3 option on a team that's won a lot of games. So like, there is a little bit more negotiating power there where like Jaden McDaniels is the 4th best player right now on a team that hasn't gotten out of a first round, like, so like we said, like, I think this could be a contract that looks even better for Minnesota 2 or 3 years down the line, but it is a projection, like, yes, he can be the best perimeter defender in the NBA right now. And still, it's like, you're still the 4th offensive option on your team. Like, I love Jaden McDaniels, like, as a player. I'm not trying to knock him at all. I'm just trying to kind of make some sense of, like, it's not like it's super unfair either. Yeah. Like, usually deals come with certain success, like, and Minnesota hasn't even had that team success. And young guys still getting paid based on projection. And it's because it is a great projection. And he has done a lot on the defensive end of the ball. And he does show a lot of offensive promise. That's where that number comes from, because it hasn't really come from like on court team success, like it usually does. The Vassell number is different, but we can talk about
that. The Vassell number is its own little thing.
That is the Spurs. They just paid Zach Collins 2 years, $35 million. They're just throwing money out. Like, you really can't. It is an outlier.
They're front loading it. They're paying for it now. And then it's, even if you look at like Vassell's contract, like, it dips down to its lowest point right when Wemby is eligible for his max contract. Like, it totally structured.
They have nothing but space right now. Yeah. They have nothing but space. And this was a way for them to then, like, when they have to really pay Wemby, now they have more space to do it. Like, it made sense. It makes sense for them, but they have nothing but space right now. And so those teams can do kind of some wild things.
So again, personally surprised that this was what the number was. Just, I mean, everyone who's listened to this, we talked about this way too much. I thought we'd be 150 plus. Like, that's what I thought the number would be. So I'm asking some people yesterday, like from other teams that I know, and but maybe reply to my text and care about this at all. Like, why, right? Why is it here? And to your point about the playoff success, that's what 2 separate people said to me. And you look at it like, Poole signed this the year they won the championship, or the summer after they won the championship. Tyler Hero signed that
East Finals.
Yeah. And they went to the finals the year before that, right? Mikal Bridges, when he signed his, that was after Phoenix went to the championship.
Yeah.
So that's, I think I missed that. Also, like, personally, like, not exactly how I would go about assigning value is totally based on where your team went. I think that's a factor. I think, like, in Poole and Hero, I think those got a little bit juiced because of that, right? And maybe that's just part of the equation. But I think that's the main reason why Jaden is under $150 million or under $30 million a year. And probably, when you are someone like us who's watching every game and kind of understanding the nuance of what Jaden unlocks for this team or has allowed to have happen, whatever, we probably see Jaden through the best light, right? The more you watch him, the more value you think he has, right? And so that's probably part of the reason too. But just overall, just on paper, looking at those numbers, you got him more like in the DeAndre Hunter range than the Jordan Poole range. Like that's a Kevin Huerter. He's kind of there. Like that's a pretty big win. But just, I think the bigger question people are going to ask is, what does this mean, for the future of this team's finances, right? It's like, who do they got to trade now? Because they signed Jaden, and obviously this is a more complicated issue in a lot of different ways than, you for sure need to trade someone or not. The way I would put it is, one, they will definitely be a luxury tax team next season. That's just a fact. The salary for sure going to be over the cap. The cap is going to be like 142, and just between Gobert, Towns, Edwards, and McDaniels next year, that's 152. So they're over the cap just to those 4 players. Add in Nas for 14, that's 166, and the luxury tax line is 172. So you're
You can't fill out a roster.
Yeah, you're over the luxury tax.
Yeah.
The real question is, can they have those four main guys, add Nas in as the fifth, and stay below the second apron? And the answer to that is they can, if they don't bring back Mike Conley or Kyle Anderson. Or if they don't, even if they don't bring back Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson and Ant makes All-NBA, they're still going to be in the second apron, and they'll need to make even additional cuts, more so than no Conley and no Anderson, if they don't want to exceed the second apron, which again, that's its own whole kind of separate conversation. But this kind of firms into the reality that Conley and Anderson are firmly on expiring contracts with uncertain futures going forward for this team. I think that is the salary cap ramification that is most noticeable about this for next season and maintaining the roster. Obviously, I know you're a big believer in what Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson mean to this team this season and probably beyond that. So knowing that this might mean no Kyle Anderson or Mike Conley for the future, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is something where like the team will watch this season play out. They will gather more information, and then it's like, okay, are those guys integral to our success? Are they more integral to our success than one of these other guys we're paying a lot of money to? And then if that is the case, then you do any gymnastics to be like, okay, how do we move one of these other guys so that we can, survive with like our three core high money guys, and then actually fill out some kind of roster with some resources. Maybe you still can't even keep both, to be honest. Even if you know this better than I do, if you deal like a cat, what realistically are the chances, and this is next offseason, that you can keep Kyle and Conley?
Well, I mean, it depends.
It depends on how much you take back. I understand that.
Yeah, and so, I mean,
but there's not a lot of teams that can just absorb.
Exactly. That's all I was going to say. Is like, there isn't. Well, now San Antonio's pockets are full, so they can't just absorb. I don't know anybody who's going to be able to absorb. I mean, it's $50 million for Cat. I don't think that's. I wanted to get into that situation.
Yeah, because like it's just like when they have to trade Cat, it's like, well, you still have to take back salary. I mean, and it's going to be, it's going to be like, maybe you can take back expirings, but that's going to be next year's money still. Unless you made a deal at like the deadline this year and take back expirings, but that I don't see them doing that. I really do think this is kind of a let's try to win a lot this year. Like, if you're like a Mike Conley, like, I want to win a championship this year, and I do think if this year starts out strong, they very much all might be in that, well, we'll worry about next year. Let's try to win a championship this year. This is like kind of like a make or break year for the entire direction of the franchise, really. Like, how they perform this year, I think will kind of really tell them how to navigate.
I don't really see a path to a financial trapdoor for space or flexibility until Rudy's off the books. I mean, you got now at this point, including this season, you got Carl on the books for 5 years, Ant on the books for 6 years, Nas on the books for 3 years, Jaden on the books for 6 years. Like, there's not like none of that money's going up every year. Like, Rudy is the first time where it kind of could come down by just letting his contract expire after the 25-26 season when he'd be 33. Or maybe you sign him to a significantly lower number. I don't know, but that's the first place where I see like a path out of this over and over again in the luxury tax and in the second apron. And like, a lot of people are going to hyper focus on the second apron stuff. But it's really, really only an issue if you're in it for multiple years. If you're in the second apron, the super tax, as they call it, for multiple years, for twice in 4 years, your pick gets moved to the end of the draft. That's an issue, on top of the fact that you can't aggregate players in trades. You can't sign anyone with the mid-level exception, all those sort of things. The real issue is multiple years in the second apron. And right now, they are trending towards being in the second apron for the 2024-25 season and for the 25-26 season. So that, like, I know there's reporting that they're going to pay the luxury tax this season and are committed to being in the luxury tax going forward. There's a difference between being in the luxury tax going forward, which any good team is,
right,
and being a team who repeatedly pays the super tax of the second apron because you're so expensive. Like the Clippers, who are loaded to the gills, made financial cost cutting moves to avoid that. The Warriors have. Like, that is very unlikely that a team is just going to live up there and pay a crazy amount of tax to do so. So I think that's kind of the next thing, is like, when do they find a year in the next to be a little bit cheaper? They can, you know, I think it's fine for next season, be a second apron team. Sure, you don't have your mid-level exceptions, whatever. You kind of got a full roster as is. I don't think it's a big deal that they're in the second apron for a season, but they don't really have a path out of it, and it is a big deal to be in the second apron for multiple seasons.
And it is just like
somewhat simplified.
And it is like you did trade for Rudy to win, like, compete for championships, right? Like, that's why you do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of quote unquote mortgage the future. And like, as you compete for championships, if you don't win it this year, like, you do need supplemental pieces to continue to help you, like, get you over the top. Like, Denver needs like a Bruce Brown, and now you see like Minnesota, maybe like if Mike Conley or Kyle Anderson is their quote unquote Bruce Brown, obviously different types of players. You know, what did Denver have to do? Well, they have to replace them with draft picks, you know, and hope that, okay, these guys that we grabbed can fill into those roles. So like, maybe that is kind of like the path Minnesota's just on. It's like, yep, we have these guys this year. Hopefully they help us contend at a high level, and we have to replace them with guys that we have taken. We have drafted. We have to hope that these guys develop into players that we can plug in and can be just as effective filling out similar roles. Like, that might just be where Minnesota's at, because it might not be so easy now moving forward to be like, well, we'll just use this exception to add this key free agent that can kind of help round out the roster. Those options might be out of play for them in the near future.
They do have their first round pick this year. And I think that's like an interesting opportunity for it. It really is the Denver situation, very similar to the Denver situation of coming off of last season and winning the championship, of like, all right, some guys are probably going to need to go. You know, is Bruce Brown the Wolves' Mike Conley? What are you going to do to be able to replace that? Like that. And when you have the limited resources of pretty much just young guys, that's why it is critical to, haven't said this in a while, but 2 timelines, right? Like, you got to you probably got to have a Leonard Miller or a Josh Minot or a Wendell Moore Jr. or somebody come out of that group who's definitely not going to play this season, and find their way into the mix there. That's just going to be necessary financially for this team.
And that's often how it is, right? Like, you know, like you have to trust your player development. Those guys get paid too. Like, you're constantly trying to, that's why you take these young guys, is that you envision them someday growing into those roles. Like, I think Minnesota has confidence Leonard Miller can be that type of player. You know, but it's always like, you need the right guys to develop to fill the right roles too. Like, okay, who is your Mike Conley fill-in? Like, I don't know if you have one right now. So those are things that they have to constantly be aware of. And like, as you're a front office member during the course of a season, those are probably the things you're thinking more about, because this year's roster is set. You know, like, what difference does it make? You're not like on a day-to-day basis, sure, you're watching and scouting and whatnot, but like, you're constantly thinking, okay, what are we going to do moving forward? Because the on-court product is largely in the coaching staff's hands.
You have anything else McDaniels extension related? I mean, I'm sure this is going to kind of be a topic for the next amount of time. But...
No. I mean, you know, like, we look at this quote unquote like cap hell that it puts them in, but like, you had to do this, and this is only a win for Minnesota. Like, this, the reality
would have been a lot more hellish, man, if it would have been for $30 million. Like, what is that, Jaden? What is the Jaden number for next season? 22.5.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really good number. Like,
I mean, if that's 27,
right? And
that's we're talking about that tight. We're talking about that tight of a difference. A couple million is going to be the difference.
It is. It's gonna totally affect like what you're able to do, and when like what you need to cut to like keep yourself above water, basically. And like, that is where it's always like, just pay them. We don't want to disgruntle. Just pay them. You know, it's like, you have to negotiate. You have to like find money on the margins where you can. And they came to a number that still works very well for Jaden McDaniels and works well for Minnesota. Like, Minnesota clearly got McDaniels camped down from where probably a higher number. And it makes sense. Like, I mean, I think Minnesota did an excellent job on negotiating this contract, coming to a good deal. Both sides happy, whatever. And I think they wisely probably had it in their pocket of like, look, if we're not going to pay him this number, and if that's where he's going to sit, we can take it to restricted. And I really think that the Wolves front office does really deserve credit for how they handled this whole thing. There was no like panic. There was no like, well, we just got to pay him. They let it play out, and it worked out really well for him.
Yeah, like you said off the top, I think it was good negotiating. Would be because it was a situation that required negotiation on a million different levels. Same representation as Ant, yada yada yada. Like understanding, getting WME to understand that, like, just because yes, we really really want your player, doesn't mean we are going to bend over backwards and do all these things for him, because if we do that, we're going to destruct our whole roster, which for us makes Jaden McDaniels less valuable. Like I think that's true. Like if you move Jaden right now into being number 2 in your pecking order, you're probably not a very good team.
Right.
4 years from now, if Jaden McDaniels is number 2, like maybe let's see.
Probably their goal. Yeah, we'll see.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's grab a quick break here. Again, reminder that we are giving away 2 tickets for the November 1st game against the Denver Nuggets, sponsored by the Genesis Company. All you got to do to be eligible to win those tickets is be a Patreon subscriber, as many of you already are. And if you are, just throw us a message that lets us know that you are available to go to the game, and we will randomly select one. If you want to become a Patreon subscriber, patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. It's also in the show notes down here on YouTube or your podcast player to get in there. We're going to be giving out tickets throughout the season. So that's patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. And the other thing we want to let you know, it's Tuesday. Season kicks off on Wednesday. Falling Knife Brewing Company it shows all the Wolves games. I'm sure they'll have a lot of people there for the season opener against the Raptors. So whether it's for the opener or one of these first games and you're trying to go out with friends to a bar to watch the game, you want to watch with the sound on and TV. You want to go to a bar and know that the sound and the TVs are going to be on. Falling Knife is an option for you. So it's Falling Knife in Northeast Minneapolis. All right, Jace, let's talk a little bit of Raptors. It's the weird time of the season where we don't really know shit about any of the other teams.
No. Especially keeping like a new coach, like, like there's and no Van Vliet, like there's like they have a lot of their same core pieces back, but like they don't have their best player back and they don't have their coach back. So it's very much like I don't know what this team's gonna look like.
This team is a really interesting team, or was along when they had Nick Nurse. The Raptors dominated the turnover battle. They are the team that had for 3 years in a row led the league in turnovers drawn, generated. They're stealing the ball from you, and they turned the ball over themselves the least of any team in the league, which I think I didn't know that. I knew they generated a bunch of turnovers, but that they are, that they were that they dominate that part of the game, and that is a big deal. It taps into some of the Wolves' weaknesses, right? So I think it's gonna be a test for a Wolves team that struggled with turning the ball over a lot last season. See here, look, led the league in turnovers generated and turned the ball over the fewest. They're also a very good offensive rebounding team, which was a problem for a Wolves team who really struggled to defensive rebound last season. It's a weird matchup, man. It's a matchup that like pokes at the holes of last year's Wolves. I would pick the Raptors for sure to win this game against last year's Wolves team. How much has this Wolves team got their stuff together? Are they going to control the ball? Are they going to rebound? Are they going to score at a higher rate? If you protect the ball and you rebound, you got a good chance against this Raptors team, who, while it does have a different coach, has a lot of players that still, I think, represent that identity. Schroeder for Van Vliet, I think that's a downgrade, but broadly a similar team. I just think it's an interesting matchup in that way.
Yeah, I agree. And And the rebounding is going to be a huge thing. Like, sometimes it's something that I always kind of find boring to talk about, but it is pretty huge. Like, and this team has to be good at it. Like, this is a good test for Minnesota. Like, you have to be a good rebounding team if you are going to go with these lineups where you're playing two centers at all times. Like, to me, like, identity has got to be huge for them. Like, Chris Finch has talked about that since the beginning of training camp. Got to have an identity. And to me, like, you've got to play into being big. Like, you've got to, I think you have to find different ways to, like, shoot more threes, but also kind of dominate the paint. Like, you have to, dominate the glass. Like, this is an opponent. Obviously, they still have Pirtle, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But like, that's one where, okay, Gobert should hopefully kind of neutralize him. Like, and he doesn't have his way against a team like Minnesota. Like, be better inside. Like, I think that is their path to being a great team all season. Like, yep, Ant will pick his spots. He will dominate games in his own way, but like, consistently be the better team on the interior. Like, control the paint on both ends of the court. That should be Minnesota's ticket to sustained regular season success and consistency and being the same quality team on a night-to-night basis. Like, if they want to be consistent, professional, all these things, have an identity, I think it's pretty clear. I think Toronto's a really good team to kind of flex that on in the first game.
Yeah, we should probably talk about who is on Toronto, right?
That's a reminder.
Jakob
I was like, I think Pirtle's on the team.
Yeah. No, it really is the same like starting group except Schroeder for Van Vliet. So it's Pirtle at the 5, who came after the trade deadline last season, Siakam at the 4, Anunoby at the 3, Scotty Barnes at the 2, and Schroeder at the 1, which is a very big team.
Yeah,
we talked about
Trent's a very big wing off the bench as well.
Exactly, and a very good wing off the bench. I looked it up.
Do you think they'll still play just 6 guys all season?
Yeah, maybe. No, new coach. It's funny how Finch always wants to play 11, and Nick Nurse was like, I'm doing 6.
But then you watch his other guys and be like, yeah, I think he's right. But they did close games horribly, and it did always look like a team that was out of gas.
I think it was. It was. But yeah, so the Pirtle elements new because he came back after the trade deadline last season. It's an obvious Gobert matchup, right? Nothing curious about, how's Rudy going to play in coverage? Does he have to guard? He's guarding a traditional 5. It gets interesting, I think, with Siakam. I was talking about this with Chris a little bit yesterday, where we recorded before the contract extension signed. And I was like,
we still don't know if Jaden's playing. We still don't.
Yes, that's so.
He still is just doing 5-on-0 work and whatnot. Like,
and even if he is physically cleared calf wise 100%, I would wonder about his cardio, which I would say to mean like maybe not 35 minutes, maybe it's just 2
20,
stints a
15.
half. Yeah, something like that, which again, I think is relevant to this. Like, let's just say Jaden didn't play.
I wouldn't play him, frankly.
Okay.
You have 2 days off. Like, after this game, like, it's just 1 game out of 82. I know the opener is really exciting, but like, you just play him Saturday.
I mean, that's the thing, is we don't know what's going on with the injury.
Right. True.
I'm in team. It's my personal guess is it's not a serious injury. And
I agree with that. I still wouldn't play him.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll say no Jaden. My question to you is, who do you have guard Siakam? Because if Jaden was 100%, I think he'd be on Siakam.
Yeah, it's just like, no matter what, you're putting Cat in a really weird spot. Like, this is one of those lineups where it's like, well, but at the same time, do you want Cat guarding somebody who like is a very legitimate 3-point threat? Like,
Anunoby.
Yeah, right. I know. Like, so
what I said yesterday was, I thought start Kyle, put him on Siakam, have Carl guard Anunoby, and then Anton Barnes, Conley on Van Vliet. Or sorry, not Van Vliet. Schroeder. Yeah. I'm just curious of, and whatever. We do this all the time.
Jaden just goes on to Siakam if Jaden plays.
Yeah, I would think, and then that makes more sense to me. I think you just got to protect Carl from foul trouble.
Yeah.
Right, with Siakam. I mean, and that's anyone, right? Siakam's going to barrel down at you for 30 times a game, right?
Just putting Carl in like the main action a lot. To
have him on Siakam. I think there's no chance.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of easy 4-5 pick and roll options for Toronto between Siakam and Pirtle if you're going to do that. Like, I think that you cannot have Cat on Siakam. I agree with that.
Right. So It's just an interesting one of those matchups, right? Where then you're like, okay, now what do we do here? Like Siakam's probably too big for Ant to guard. I'm just curious to see how Finch approaches this, because I think it'll be telling for like, these are the matchups that are question marks of like, when Carl is playing a team who his typical matchup would put him in the action a ton, how does Finch respond to that? And Toronto is that, which I think he will, respond by taking him out. But if he doesn't, that's telling in and of itself. If he's like, no, like with Jokic in the playoffs, he's like, no, Carl, go guard their best player.
Yeah.
Which
the idea there is that you have a great safety net in Rudy, like.
Yeah, Siakam and Jokic are stylistically very different, very, very different players. But I was just looking at that and I'm like, I don't know. Like that, the Siakam Giannis like archetype,
right?
The four who can handle and create themselves is,
and it's trying to get to the rim. Really trying to get to the rim. Yeah.
I would love to see Ant step up into that at some point. Like I think he is strong enough
with his strength. Yeah, I agree with that.
If it's just like an ISO, like with like Giannis, I mean, it's Siakam too.
Minnesota is a great isolation defense team, like in general. So
Ant is a great isolation defender. Ant is a bad defender when there's screens.
That's correct. I agree. Yeah, and so that is where like Carl would be the least adept at. Like I think I wouldn't have Kyle on Siakam. I don't think. I honestly think like Nikhil would do a fine job on Siakam.
Okay, and sorry, me and Chris talked about that a lot yesterday. I buried that as that's what probably a lot of people will think when Jaden doesn't start that.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at Nikhil, who's 200 pounds. Sure. I don't know, 210, like maybe. And Siakam's a lot bigger than he is.
Sure, that's
so
true.
that it's right in that range. If it was like Paul George or okay, then I see that. That's just a little bit different of a player where that's what Siakam tries to do is like bombard you.
Yeah, I understand that. I would just always, in my situation there, I'd be like, Nikhil, get up, apply as much pressure on the perimeter as possible. Like, and you won't just flat out get beat, but like, and I know it's not always like funnel things to Rudy. So I'm not saying that, but just apply a lot of pressure and make it difficult. And if Siakam kind of bowls through you, well, now he's at Rudy, like, and then we can live with that. These are like the interesting matchups though, where like teams built like this do like, they put Minnesota in a weird position where like, what do you do with Carl? And yet they don't make their defensive situation weird because like you would always put somebody smaller on Carl, on the perimeter and whatnot to make somebody who can press up on him. Like I'm suggesting Nikhil would do with Siakam, and Carl then having to like have pressure, probably guys in on the elbows, whatever. Like it pushes teams like more into the traditional, like what we think is like a good Carl defensive game plan. And it puts Carl in a really bad position on the other end. And that is like the whole sticking point, I think, for me still of this two bigs thing is like it really hurting Carl in multiple ways, pushing teams into the proper game plan against him because they have to. And they can't just like be like, well, Carl's the center, we'll put Pirtle on Carl and then Carl will feast. And then in the opposite way, now Carl is in a total mismatch defensively. Like, so these things like how they handle them, how they mitigate that, I think it's huge because otherwise some matchups are going to be very difficult for the team and for Carl individually.
Yeah, it makes this first game interesting.
Right.
Like this is is in early or as early as you can, like litmus test of so many of the things. The double bigs thing. They turned the ball over a ton last year and we're kind of like, okay, Mike Conley's here. Like they're going to do that less this year. Still overall, they turned the ball over a lot. Like, oh, we think they're going to be a better defensive rebounding team this year. Well,
gotta see it.
Weren't one, like
gotta see it. Yeah.
Which I say to mean, I guess this would be the glass half full. If the Wolves win this game by like 15 points in Toronto.
Yeah.
And like
they're like 1
point
underdogs. They're 1 point underdogs, which I think is pretty fair.
Yeah. Like I would take that to be an actually like a good win.
Yeah.
Particularly if Jaden's out or at limited minutes. It's interesting you brought up I don't know why I didn't think of this, but like who's guarding Carl element of it. I went back and looked at the other Toronto games, and it was like the Wolves were just decimated by injuries. It's like I'm like, okay, who guarded Siakam when they played him last year? Oh, Taurean Prince started and guarded. I'm like, that's irrelevant, And then Carl didn't play in either of the games, so I'm kind of.
Do you think it's funny that Taurean Prince is starting for the Lakers and Malik Beasley starting for the Bucks? like championship aspiration teams, like and Wolves bench players from like 2 years ago starting.
That is, I think it's a great fit for both of them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Like that is the right role, I think, for both of those guys.
I don't think Malik's a starting caliber player. And
no, but
Torian is
getting Malik at the minimum if I'm Milwaukee.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think in the starting lineup, I don't think he'll be there all season, but I agree that it's a good team fit.
Like I told you this, I was watching one of their preseason games, and Malik is just out there like hyped, like doing his like clapping it up on defense, yelling at everyone thing, and I'm like, I know that.
Yep,
that looks like a guy who's good at defense.
He is so good at looking like, well, he tries hard.
Just the whenever Ant's pissed at the ref, and he does the like that's Beasley to every one of his teams. He's like going to like Giannis. He's like, back.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, Malik. Yeah. But I love that time. Malik, of like the players I have watched up close in person for the Timberwolves, is open gym one of the best shooters probably the best shooter I've ever seen. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody.
That's why
I loved watching that dude.
That's why the streakiness is actually kind of weird. Always has been kind of weird.
I think it's up here.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Anyways, that was Milwaukee Bucks talk. I don't know. I'm just
Lakers.
And Lakers. I'm excited to start watching all of these teams, right? Like Toronto, again, I watched like the first quarter of one of their preseason games, and that's the extent of having seen them. Jaden's brother moves the exact same way as him, which is like, watch that during the game. It is the weirdest thing. Like those guys.
Sure.
It's like, what was that in the football where like the players like moved the exact same way at the same time? Remember all those videos? Remember what I'm talking about? No, where it's
sounds cool though.
I'll figure it out. But watch Jaden and Jalen McDaniels. They are the same person. Like they move the exact same way. I'm excited to watch Toronto.
That's an important depth piece for Toronto too. Like they really didn't have any depth last year, and so if they can actually build out like decent 8-man rotation, like that's a step forward for them.
And they're trying to make him Jaden. I think in Charlotte and stuff, they were like using him as like a 4 or 5. Now I think he's like a little bit more of a wing in a more traditionally built team, but Toronto's not a bad team. Surprised me.
No. That's a team that at minimum has play-in expectations at minimum. Like it's a decent team, and like you said, that would be a very good road win to start the year.
I would agree with that. And if it's like a 15-point win, like I'm like, okay, like the optimistic part of me that has come out through training camp that kind of got me to slowly boost from like 45 wins to 46 to 47. Like I'll be like, okay, I continue the momentum going. Some of the things I began believing in over the course of the past month, I believe in a little bit more because I saw it. I saw it in a game. I just think
they won by 15. I mean, that for me, like, and it looks like pretty dominant. I mean, that for me would be like, wow, this maybe really could be a good team that kind of matched what it did for large chunks of the preseason, and like maybe they just are going to be very good. And that's not out of the question that this especially could be a really good regular season team. I don't see why that. A lot of
kind of my anticipation.
Yeah, a lot of Rudy teams have been really good regular season teams. Like, and then you see like if your different pieces make the playoffs different. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And if they come out and like, and it looks like the things just fit, like maybe they did a little bit more towards the end of last year, then I think this game will set a big tone where if like they look a little clunky, confused, the too big thing is kind of like against a awkward fit. Then that'll raise some question marks because there are a lot of awkward fits that exist now and exist more and more as teams kind of evolve and like have injuries and whatnot during the season where you're like, oh, this guy's not playing, but now it becomes an awkward fit for Minnesota. So how do they play against it?
Is it going to feel like playing against San Antonio and Oklahoma City in the first couple games last season where those teams made the double bigs thing a problem?
Yes.
For the Wolves.
Got to be an asset. Can't be a problem.
Boom. And this matchup is going to be a good test for that.
I would say just real quick, like the OKC opener last year, they won that game. I watched it and I was like, this looks not good. For like it looked kind of awkward. They looked like they got out hustled, like these are all things that like I want to see against Toronto too. Like Are you coming out with a different mindset? Do you look different? And a lot of that comes from like confidence in what you're doing. Like if you're able to push the pedal down because you know where you're going and what your role is and all these types of things and how
it's a
things are
test
going
for
to
the
fit.
continuity thing.
Yes,
this whole
exactly.
concept of the value of that.
Right.
And Toronto has some roster continuity, new coach, though, like
new coach, the point guard, you know, like that matters.
Yeah, like if this continuity is a big thing, like that's in theory something that continuity takes advantage of. I think I would take the Wolves in this game. So I would take this point.
I do too.
I think that's where I'm at with this.
I just like, you said the 15-point win. If they win by 6, I'll still be like, that's a really good win.
Yeah.
Those are the games that you have to win that can push you up towards like the high 40s versus being a mid 40s team.
Absolutely. All right. Today's show is, as every show with Jace is brought to you by Prize Picks, prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app for a $100 sign up bonus. If you want to join us in playing Prize Picks, they also got obviously the NBA slate up there tonight for the Tuesday game. They've got a promo going with, where is it? With Steph. Yeah, Steph scores a point. You get a free square there. So if you're going to play, play tonight, make sure to get that one in there, or play this week, get that in your mix. But we're going to look, me and Jace always pick from the Sunday slate of games. It's Tampa Bay Bucks versus Buffalo Bills. I just kind of threw some of these up here. I want you to help me. What are you seeing from this?
We have super limited options. So like even us getting to 4 is going to be a little tough because there just aren't that many up there yet, because they usually come out more as the week comes out.
Yeah, we normally record on Wednesday mornings. We're recording on Tuesday.
So more options pop up. So like we're only 2 days out. But what I have is I took Baker Mayfield over 230.5 passing yards because I do think they'll be down. And they've been other games where they're down and they just can't move the ball at all. I think they'll be able to move the ball against a banged up Buffalo defense in a second
low
half
number
where they're losing. Right. And then I took touchdowns, Stephon Diggs to not score one.
I had that too. So okay. So talk to me about that. I looked it up. He has 6 touchdowns in 7 weeks.
Yeah, I hear you.
But he's only scored a touchdown in 4 of the 7 weeks. He had 1 3-touchdown game. He's not, I've just from having looked at these, like he's not normally on the listed here.
Right.
They're kind of starting to give him credit. You
have to be really good to have a 0.5 like it is 50-50 basically what these things are trying to say. That
here are the guys that are up there right now, and I'm assuming
who scores 2 every single week.
Walker, who scored a ton, Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Pacheco, Jacobs. It's like for me, the softest of those 2 are Diggs and Jacobs. Maybe there,
I agree with that.
So I'm kind of
under on touchdowns. It's like it's always more like, unless you get like a Christian McCaffrey, it really is always more likely that a guy doesn't score than he does in a like oftentimes. So yeah, I would take the under on Diggs, just a probability play. He very well might score, but these are all probability plays, and like not scoring seems right in there.
So okay, we're doing this together. This is going to be a group effort.
Yeah. I think at this point you got to take a Bucks receiver, pick one, and take the over.
We gotta go Mike Evans then.
Sure.
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both 60.5 receiving yards. We'll take more than 60.5 for Mike Evans, who's again just been awesome this year. I don't know. Gabe Davis, less than 37.5 receiving yards.
Sometimes he looks like he's not on the team, and sometimes he looks like the best player in football.
He gets, I know, and he gets a ton of looks in the red zone. Like I think Gabe Davis could have a touchdown in this game
and go under,
and go less than 37.5. Should we do that?
Sure.
Okay, so we got Diggs to not score a touchdown. We got Gabe Davis to receive less than 37.5 receiving yards. We got Mike Evans to have more than 60.5 receiving yards, and we got Baker to throw for more than 230.5 passing yards.
And we both think Buffalo's going to win.
Yeah.
Diggs won't score. Davis won't do anything.
Yeah.
Big days for Baker, Mike Evans, and Bills win 30-20.
We are on a relative hot streak here with our picks for this. We're still, I think we're still coming back from last season.
We went 3-1 this last week. So I would just say, just ensure your picks or whatever with us so that you only still win some money.
Exactly. All right. So those are the 4. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Promo code Dane for a $100 sign up bonus. if you want to do that with us. And again, try it out for the NBA stuff. I'm gonna probably mess around with that a little bit more this year. Talk about that. Hopefully, Wolves specific ones if those are up the day of when we're doing them, just to kind of have fun with those too. But yeah, prize picks. Go ahead.
Always like prize picks and stuff. Like you mentioned that Steph Curry one. I've got friends who play things like this, and they like only play when there's a free square. And then you pick one free square, and then you have to get one other one right, and you can turn $10 into 30 or whatever.
Right.
You know, like it's which it's now if you just have to get one thing right to turn $10 into 30, like that's a great play. So like look out for those types of things. If at minimum you're like, I don't know, I wouldn't get those right. Like they give you one sometimes.
They're giving you one.
Yeah, check the app, see when they give you one.
Reel in,
then play. Yeah, right. You know, like and then you can be disciplined if you want to, you know.
Yeah.
But, what was your final win total? You said you've been moving it around. Would you end up?
Yeah, I ended up getting up to 47 and the 5 seed.
Okay.
And what you said last week? What yours was? I'm trying to write down.
I haven't said anything.
Okay,
in my head, I was at 46.
46. Okay, so me and Britt both said 47. Kyle said 48. You said 46. I think I asked Chris what his was. The way I said it was like I said 47 and 5 seed, and I'm like, I feel like this is an expected value, not like a prediction. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
Where I'm like, I could see like 50, I could see 44. Yep. Like it's kind of like in between. I mean, maybe that's just the right way to do it. I've been saying this a bit. Like, I want to look at all this stuff in like a month.
Yeah.
You know, once I got like, which I know it's not how these season long win total things go, but I like doing that so much more. Once I've actually had a chance to, get a month in the season, I'll probably have watched at least a game of every Western Conference team, and have a better feel, not just for the teams individually, but the real thing that is messing me up with these win totals is like, I don't know what to think about win total. And we've talked about this before. Win totals in the West overall, like I think it's going to be crunchy.
Yeah.
And maybe that won't be the case, right? Maybe we'd start getting 6 weeks into the season. We're like, actually, there are 4 bad teams in the West.
Right.
Like
you don't know which teams maybe gets off to a good start. Like last year, Utah, you would have been like, I don't know, 20 wins. And then they start out and it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Never mind. Like that's a good team.
Yeah.
Exactly. I very much agree with you that like the win totals before the season starts, that feels really like, and I get that this is, in some way, shape or form, like a sports talk podcast, but like it feels too much like sports talk radio, just like filling air. Like, oh, I think this. Like it's so much more fun when there's something to actually break down and some data to actually be like, well, I think we've seen this. I think that's going to translate to this. Like no evidence, just like spouting off opinions. It always just feels a little bit like empty.
Well, it's like me and you follow the rest of the NBA, but even like this Toronto match.
Yeah, I'm like, who's on the team again? Like, I think I mean, I had it, but like, it was 90% sure who was still on their team. Like, because July was a long time ago. Like, like in July, you're like, wow, they've got this guy, but that's 3 months. Like where time passes, and you're like, I think I remember that's who they signed.
And this past month, I think for me in particular, I'm just like doing all Wolves, right? And like not really paying attention to or watching any other preseason games or anything really. Like I need that time to like familiarize myself with some of these teams, because if you and I would have done a win totals over under thing and one of us would have been like arguing hard for the Raptors over, we'd be like, all right, wait, who's on the team?
You think so? Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Like, if you're passionate about this, I'll go with you. Yeah.
On to Indiana.
The only team in the NBA that I'm confident in there, whatever it is, I don't care what it is, I would take a Dallas under. I think that team is going to be terrible.
Kyle's on that like heavy too.
Yeah. And I know you believe in a little bit more just like because of, they have like Luka Doncic. I understand.
Yeah, man.
I just think the pieces make no sense. I look at that roster every time and I'm like, I don't see how this is a fit. It just seems like it's destined for disaster.
Can't argue with that.
And I know, and that totally can be like they had a rough preseason and they looked really bad at the end of last year. But to me, I'm like, well, that kind of just data, like this is your team.
Never been a big Grant Williams guy either. So that's not a big needle mover. I like Josh Green, but
I just think you needed shooters there, and I understand that they needed some defense and toughness with Williams, but like it just didn't. I don't think any of the pieces quite fit just right.
Yeah, no, and it's never a great idea to bet on the teams in kind of desperation, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, and who's more desperate than like Dallas right now?
Nobody.
Just really like sunken assets and like.
Well, sunken assets, but they're stuck with them. You know, like they re-signed Kyrie. Like this is it. This is their team. You know, like
yeah. I just like I think just like straight up, no odds, whatever. Like I think I got Luka to win MVP. I just think the numbers are gonna be nuts.
I think he deserves it if he gets like 44 wins.
Which I think would still be the under.
It probably is. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm so confident in them going under whatever it is. If it's around, I think it's pretty similar to Minnesota's, which I think is insane.
Yeah.
USA Today had their predictions out, and it was like Dallas 44 wins, Minnesota 45. It's like, okay, the Minnesota number makes sense, but if Dallas is just about as good as Minnesota this year, like I would be like, wow, something went wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think their win total was like the Vegas one was like one above the Wolves. I'm pretty sure. Like, and but again,
I get it. You think you have a top 5 player, you know, and you probably do, but like, yeah,
it does take more than that. That's like the Russ with the Thunder is kind of.
Well, that's what Shea is now. I mean, like they have more pieces on the team, but like he's been given top 10 status by like every ranking I've seen.
He has, which is, yeah, that's a whole.
It seems a little early for me, but yeah.
It actually kind of sucks because that's been my whole team that I've been like, oh man, this team's
I know. You and I would text about the Thunder every night.
No, you would text me about the Jazz, and I would text you about the Thunder. Those were our under the radar teams. Oklahoma City, not anymore. All right, Chase, you got to get out of here. Again, obviously, the season opener is on Wednesday. Kyle and I are going to go live after that game, so you can go over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@DaneMooreNBA. We'll be tweeting out the links to that. We're going to kind of test run that road games, big road games that I'm not on the road for. I'm going to try and mix in some lives with that this year too. So that's kind of next up on the pod schedule. That will also publish as a podcast on Thursday morning, and then me and Britt will also talk on Thursday. So that's what's coming up. He's Jace Frederick, reading everything he's writing over at the Pioneer Press. We're excited about the Conley Corner.
I think there's a new one coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, I saw you talking to him yesterday.
Online today.
So, sweet. So look that up. I'm sure Jace will tweet that out, or over at Pioneer Press, or what is the
TwinCities.com.
TwinCities.com, not PioneerPress.com. TwinCities.com.
I think if you type in PioneerPress.com, I think you get there.
I'm pretty sure I have, actually. I'm pretty sure I have done that before and it works. But yeah, read that. Follow him on Twitter at Jace Frederick. And Jace and I will be talking about this team for the next 7 months on Wednesdays. Can't wait. Appreciate you doing it, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, he's Jace. I'm Dane. I'll be back to talk to you on Wednesday night with Kyle. Until then, peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the